The topic of the webinar is tools and pitfalls for using AI to give feedback on student writing. I'm sure you remember my colleague, Kendra Adore, who joined me on the last webinar when we discussed um, different ways to use AI in the writing process. And unfortunately, she's not able to be here in the webinar today, but she and I met and we discussed different tools and how we might use them. And she created a slideshow and some handouts for you. We can go through that, and then we're going to actually try a few prompts that she and I came up with that might be useful in the different activities that we undertake as teachers. But the overall objective of this webinar is to understand how AI tools, and including ChatGPT, and that's the one we'll focus on the most, can assist in handling large cohorts of students. Kendra and I sat down to discuss this. I had told her that in some scenarios, you may have very large numbers of students in one class in Pakistani universities. And so it makes a lot of methods of assessment and teaching that might be used in smaller classes difficult to employ or difficult to apply. So we kind of looked at how that's where AI might be able to come in and help you. Hopefully, that'll show you some ways to implement AI assisted strategies for grading, giving feedback, and providing personalized learning to your students, and to enhance student engagement and automate repetitive academic tasks using AI so that it can keep these large numbers of students engaged. And we also want to think about ways to mitigate the ethical concerns and the limitations in academic assessment using AI. We all know how it is to have large classes, and especially if you've got 100 students or hundreds of students and you're teaching something like language, it's just overwhelming. I mean, there are especially first and second year courses in certain subject areas where multiple choice computer graded tests have been around for a long time. And I remember taking them. I would be in a biology class with 400 students when I was an undergraduate, and that's all we got for assessment was multiple choice tests, and they were graded by computers. That's so much more difficult when you're teaching language and when you're teaching writing. So finally, AI provides us the tool that has been available to some of these other subject areas for decades, actually. So we will look at how we can optimize tasks, reduce workload, and improve the quality of the feedback that people can get. And what AI can actually do now is automate grading and feedback, summarize discussion board posts, personalize student learning, and reduce the repetitive tasks, frequently answered questions, content summaries, things like that. I would think that if there's a certain way that you would like to explain how not to make a certain grammar error, you could get AI to do that. That's a type of repetitive task. I find myself constantly trying to explain certain grammatical concepts when I see it showing up in people's writing. And it takes time to retype the same comment for every student. So AI can reduce that type of repetition. So what you can use, and we've tested this, you can use ChatGPT to generate rubric-based feedback on essays, reports, and short answer questions. You can help with multiple choice grading and auto explanations for incorrect answers. Now, actually, inside at my university, we have a learning management system called Blackboard, and it has a built-in AI tool that will write multiple choice and short answer quizzes and tests and grade them. So I don't know how many of you are using Blackboard or similar learning management systems, but if you are, that would be a place to check because some of those already have built-in AI tools. It can grade multiple choice quizzes and tests and automate explanations for incorrect answers. Some of the tools that you might find most useful will be ChatGPT, Gradescope, and Turnitin Draft Coach. If you have large numbers of students, you can use AI to provide feedback at scale. So you can get individualized feedback for students based on rubrics that you create and give to the AI robot. So if you create a rubric, give it to ChatGPT, it can analyze a piece of student writing and suggest improvements. We'll do a demo of that here today. It can summarize peer reviews. So you could have students peer review each other. You can have AI summarize the key points of the peer review, provide them to you, and then you could refine those key points and you can use those as topics for discussion in the next class, or you can use those to see what kinds of things students were commenting on in their paper, and maybe that can inform you of what they feel they need to work on, because sometimes what students think they need to work on and what we think the students need to work on isn't the same. And sometimes they are correct about what they need to work on because they don't, if they lack confidence in that particular area or whatever. So AI can help with that. To use it for student engagement, you can set up a chatbot using ChatGPT or Perplexity AI to handle frequently asked questions. There are questions that come up over and over again. That can save your office hours for more in-depth discussions about subject matter. It can generate customized quizzes and exercises based on students' performance on previous work. You can create progressive difficulty questions based on past errors, right? And you can enhance discussion boards by summarizing and highlighting key discussions that come up. Now, you can also use AI to prepare for your courses. That's another issue that we haven't talked about yet, but at my university, people are expected to teach 5 courses every semester and 2 in the summer, which is a intensive summer term. And sometimes people end up teaching 5 different courses. So instead of teaching 3 English courses, English 101 courses, and then 2 different courses, they'll teach 5 completely separate courses. That's 5 completely separate preps. And I think that the fair way to evaluate this is to say that for every hour you spend in the classroom, you need to prep for 2 hours. And yes, after you've taught the same class many times, that the prep time might go down, but at the same time, we're constantly developing our courses, we're constantly improving them and altering them. So I think it's just fair to say, in general, 1 hour of class time is 2 hours of prep. So if you teach 5 classes and each one meets for 3 hours a week, like at my university, that's 30 hours of prep and 15 hours of class time, because you have to prep separately for each of those 5 classes. That's 45 hours. That leaves no time for marking or anything else. And if you add on to that that you have a large number of students, it just becomes even more overwhelming. So you can use AI tools to help you prep. If you've got lectures that you've written, or if you've transcribed class discussions, you can get it to generate summaries of those, and that can help you um, pinpoint talking points for the next course meeting. Otter AI is something that you can install, and it will follow you around to all of your meetings. It'll go to your Zoom meetings, your Teams meetings, and things like that, and it will summarize everything for you. You can use Chat GPT to do it if you get the transcripts, and then there's Whisper AI. You can have it generate reading materials. You can have it generate exercises. If students are struggling with certain material, you can simplify complex concepts for them using ChatGPT, and you can have it generate case studies and examples based on real world applications if you're teaching a subject matter where that would be helpful to you. So that can all save time. There are some real concerns with AI, and I am here talking about it and talking about how useful it can be because, like I said at our last webinar revolving around the topic of AI, it's here. It's been here a lot longer than many people realize, and it's going to start getting integrated in the way people work. So, when social media came out, I didn't like it, yet it hasn't gone away and it's not going away. When cell phones first came out, I didn't see much need for them myself because my personal life didn't revolve around having one. But then, I started using them, and now I use it for all kinds of different things. So it's a type of technology that's here, and we just have to figure out the most ethical way to use it and the most productive way to use it. So one of the big problems is plagiarism. We know people are using it for plagiarism. Researchers seem to be using it for plagiarism, but students definitely seem to be using it for plagiarism. You can use Turnitin AI or GPT-0 to detect for AI. I find that to be a little bit problematic because when I see something that looks like a student used AI to create it, then I would run it through multiple AI detectors and I'll get different results. And so, in order to be fair to students, that's another ethical concern. We can't be unfair to students, and we can't say, I'm going to fail you because your paper didn't have any grammar errors, and I can't believe that you don't have make grammar errors. And what if they did work really hard and write a paper free of grammar errors? So we have to be careful about how we use those detectors as well, because the AI is not all they don't always detect it accurately, and they have to continually be updated as well. In fact, they are AI bots of a sort in their on their own. So I think providing guidelines for how students use it responsibly is the best approach, not to completely 100% discourage it because I think they're going to use it anyways, but rather to figure out ways to get them to integrate it into their creative process without relying on it to be creative for them. One example of that is the that I can give you now is the research template that I created for the template that I created for the research proposal. I used AI in that, but I didn't use AI to write that. I actually wrote the entire template on myself, by myself, without looking at anything, not even any examples. Just I wrote the policy for requesting research leave for professors at my university when I was the dean of the business school. And when I wrote that policy, I wrote a template that professors could use to request teaching reductions in order to do research. And I just wrote it based on my own knowledge of how those things look. But what I used AI for was to ask AI to produce one after the fact. I just said, write a template for a research proposal just to see what it would come up with. And then I compared it to the one I'd written. For the most part, the templates were very, very similar, but there were a couple of items in it that the AI had approached differently. And that allowed me to think about whether I wanted to modify my own work or not. So I use it as a way to give myself a sort of self-evaluation of some work that I had already done without AI. But see, that's a way to use it creatively without having it do your creativity for you. So that's just one example. And I think we need to think about different ways that it can be integrated in an ethical way where it's not doing the creative work for us, but or our students, but then that it's helping us enhance our creative process. The other problems that there are with teachers using AI is that AI is biased. It is trained on texts that will have bias in them, and therefore it itself is going to be biased. It's not actually, it's just processing the information that it's trained on and reformulating it. So if you think about all of the text on the internet that they train AI on, very, very many large portions of those texts are going to be biased. Even some of them are going to be very intentionally biased, and some of them are going to be unintentionally biased. But nonetheless, any biases that are in those texts, those vast numbers of texts that AI is trained on, are going to get incorporated into the AI because it doesn't know reality, it just knows information. So we have to be very careful about the fact that it can be biased. And so that's where the human element has to come in. If we use it to give feedback or assess student performance, we have to monitor what it does and we have to review it before we finalize any grades or before we pass that feedback on to the students. I think we also have an ethical obligation to let students know if we are going to use AI to assess their work, what we're going to use it for. And well, first of all, that we are going to use it. And second, what would we use it for in the way that we assess their work? So not to just lead them to believe that we sat down and personally assess their work, but rather to say, we may use AI to assess these aspects of your work, or we may reserve the right to do so, or something like that. But just to be transparent about whether we're using it and if so, how, and not to rely on it completely. Like I said, there needs to be a human element. We had planned some live demos, and I'm going to go over to the chat GPT here. The prompt we had is here. I'm going to copy it. Okay, and then we're going to look at that same paper we looked at last time. Okay, now if you recall, at last week's webinar, we had essentially come up with some similar comments here. Now, this is giving the same essay, and I did upload the PDF, and it allowed me to upload it, but I'm using ChatGPT 4.0, and I pay the $20 a month subscription for this, which honestly, I got it just to try and figure out what my students were using it for. Um, but look at what it said. Now, we came up with something similar. We talked about how terrible the grammar was. So it gave it a 3 out of 10. We didn't give it a score, but we definitely wouldn't have given it a high grammar score. Someone had mentioned that. We talked about the argument strength being uh, pretty good for an undergraduate, you know, maybe not for a PhD candidate in comparative literature, but for an undergraduate, we thought it was good. I recall that from our discussion. So this has given it the same. And the clarity, this is where I was complaining about the boxcar structure and how it just jumps from one point to the next, and then you don't have a lot of cohesion in the way the points are organized. And then its use of evidence, which that's tied pretty closely to argument. Now, we didn't ask it to go through my hierarchy of concerns, but it is following the rubric that we gave it. Anyways, that's what happened with that particular paper. And as you say, oh, and then here it offers some suggestions for improvement and approach to revision. Another thing you can do is summarize discussion boards. So what I'm going to do now is take one of our discussion boards and ask ChatGPT to summarize it. Now, in our discussion boards in our course, here's what our forums look like, right? We've got this particular discussion forum, and it has so far these particular replies. Now, when you look at the discussion boards, you can have the display replies flat with the oldest first, flat with the newest first, in threaded form or in nested form. I think having it flat is going to be easiest. So, because I'll show you why. If you do the nested form, then you see it indents these to say so the response to. We can try that. Let's try that. See if it still selects it all. Yeah, it still does. So I'm going to copy that. Okay, so we're going to say summarize these. I'm going to say take out the word 50 responses into key themes and insights. Okay, so this is our own discussion forum. It only had 18. I think it had 18 posts. Okay, now we have to ask, is this correct or not? Several participants emphasized both the necessity of both theoretical and conceptual frameworks. Dr. Eubanks and others acknowledged the ambiguity in distinguishing the two. I think I think it was Rubina who brought up the ambiguity and not me. Theoretical frameworks offer broad, established perspectives, while conceptual frameworks provide a more tailored approach, often integrating multiple theories. Are both frameworks needed? Full dissertations typically require both frameworks. Question highlighted the importance of clarity. Yeah, so I don't know how y'all feel about this. This is one where I would feel like we should double check because um, sometimes it seems like it's definitely picking up on the key elements, but it's not certain to me that it's doing so as accurately as I would like it to. What was the wording we used up here? We used key themes and insights. So influence of audience and purpose, challenges with writing across genres, strategy for improved academic writing. It's still coming up, strategizing, summarizing these. While we're waiting for this, Rabia asks, can we upload one of your research proposals to it to get feedback? Yes, why don't, would someone want to volunteer theirs? Any volunteers? Okay, well, just send it to the chat group on the WhatsApp chat. Now I'll download it really quick so I don't have to dig through the Moodle site to find it. All right. Please provide feedback on uploaded research proposal with key points on how it conforms to research presented proposal, its overall structure, paragraph structure, only be sure to provide instructive criticism as well as positive successful problem. Okay, so I've given it instructions. I've uploaded the file. And here we go. A research proposal presents a well-defined and methodologically sound study on the relationship between perceived teacher support, L2 grit, and foreign language enjoyment in shaping willingness to communicate among Pakistani English learners. Okay. Strengths and conformance to genre, areas for improvement, budget section. See, now here's where, as a teacher, I would go through and say, some research projects aren't going to get budgets and you're not asking for money. So I might go in and alter this and but this one I would probably leave in there. I haven't seen the proposal yet, but depending on what your methods are, the statement that no IRB approval is needed might want to be further clarified. Again, I can't say because I haven't yet read this, but I'm now very much looking forward to reading this proposal. But one, two, three, four, 5 stars. I'm assuming that's out of five. Excellent adherence to research proposal conventions is the overall rating. Okay, argument and justification. 4 stars. Strong argument with minor refinements needed. But here is the strengths. Here are the areas for improvement. Um, Structure and organization. Okay. The introduction could benefit from a more concise problem statement. Um, Methodology section is detailed, but might need some subheadings. Okay, so all the way together, good. Paragraph structure and coherence here. Um, so, Dr. Sadia, I don't know how accurate you feel this is, but it's definitely giving you quite a good um, overall rating in every one of the areas that I asked for. So there you have it. Now, I just made up that paragraph to tell it what to focus on based on the hierarchy of concerns that I shared with you last week, right? And it followed it. And so, in this particular case, that I didn't really provide it a rubric. I just told it what to. I guess that you could consider that an informal rubric. I'm not sure, but looks like you have a very good research proposal, and I'm definitely looking forward to reading it just by looking at these comments. And what I will do is I will, um, Dr. Sadia, is I will paste these comments. I'll make my own comments, but I will paste these in there for you as well when I evaluate your research proposal. So auto quiz generator, right? We can choose a topic. Kendra suggested climate change. Generate 5 multiple choice questions on climate change with correct answers and explanations. Okay, well, let's try that. Well, here we see it's creating these um, multiple choice questions. If anyone would like to suggest some multiple choice questions now, not the questions themselves, but if you would like to suggest a topic that's close to your field, um, go for it. And I'm going to download all of these and put them onto uh, discussion forum or put them in the Moodle site. So I'm going to say, write a 10-question quiz please write a 10-question grammar quiz on subject verb agreement in English. On 10-question, fill in the blank grammar quiz on subject verb agreement in English. Please provide answers and explanations. Question. All right. Grammar quiz. Oh, Navid says level of difficulty should be tricky and needs to be carefully defined. Yes, that's a very good point. I usually would say for a first year undergraduate English course or something like that. So this is a very basic, and to me, this will be a very basic quiz, like a beginning level uh, grammar quiz on subject verb agreement. It might be more difficult to do tenses. verb tenses more generally might be a more advanced quiz. Would you like me to adjust the difficulty of the questions? Yes, please. These are for university students in their first year of studying foreign language. Okay. And although in Pakistan, I would assume that most first year of university to students have studied English in secondary school or both primary and secondary school. Um, yes, the prompt always has to be clear to get the desired response. Sometimes it's good to anticipate having an actual conversation with the robot because it can look back at some answer it gave you and then refine it. But sometimes I've found that can be difficult as well. Ah, yeah, okay, let me finish it'll let it finish writing this. Right, because it's only using tense or wait, well, number, it's using number. It's only asking whether it's singular or plural, right? But subject verb agreement could also mean number and it could also mean person. So if it's first person, second person, third person, if it's singular, plural, and if it's past or present, um, so forth. Yes, please test your knowledge. Person, number, and tense. Well, we're only doing subject verb agreement, so and number, and please, yeah, for choices instead of two for each question. Yes, you should cross-check everything. It definitely makes mistakes. I think the big thing here is you can never use um, AI to generate something and not look at it first and make sure that um, it isn't making mistakes. Um, so here we go. My friends is, was, are, has very supportive whenever I have a problem. So this makes it a little bit more difficult. But there you go when it has four. Uh, what do you all think? What grading tasks would you like to have AI help you with that we haven't talked about today? I think using it for feedback on your own writing is that's how I've used it. I've never really used it for feedback on my students' writing other than to test it and see what it could do. But I haven't actually given that feedback to students. So, but I've used it for mine, and it sounds like y'all are seeing the value in that. How can it be integrated without compromising integrity or ethics? And what kind of challenges do you see in implementing? Dr. Abdul asked a question: is there any software that will automate the entire process where students upload a thesis and the the robot that just automatically responds to it, sends the response to both the student and the teacher? I'm not sure. I wouldn't want that to do that because like I was saying earlier, I would want to make sure that the AI isn't being biased or just incorrect. And I would want to make sure that it's actually addressing areas of assessment that I would want to address in the way that I would want it addressed to help the students most. So I wouldn't want to remove the human element. But again, I can understand the need to do that with very large numbers of students. And if there, I don't know if any that are doing that, but that's probably something that's on the horizon. Um, maybe you should uh, develop a proposal of how that would work and send it to a learning management system and see if they'll pay you for that and buy it for you. Can you use AI to get feedback on your literature review? Yes, you can just upload it just like we did today in the webinar, I would think. Yes, people are very often scared of their writing a theoretical framework, but again, like if you're afraid of using AI, then just be careful about using it ethically. Just write a theoretical framework, ask it for feedback, revise the theoretical framework, ask it for more feedback, and then revise it again, and then ask it to write one on its own, and then compare the one that you've written and revised through your dialogue with the AI to the one it wrote, and then ultimately modify the one you wrote and revised. But if you're just asking it for feedback on your theoretical framework or your literature review or any other aspect of your paper, then um, it's not generating text for you. It's just telling you areas of to focus on in revision. I think that's perfectly fine. You have to be able to decide whether it's giving you good advice or not, but you're not using it to do the creative part for you if that's what you're doing with it, in my opinion. Yeah, you can ask it whether you're using the appropriate word choice, things like that. I mean, I don't find those to be ethically problematic because you're not pretending that, you're not saying that you wrote something that AI actually wrote. So, I have students that they can barely put together a grammatically correct sentence and they're turning in these perfectly grammatically correct essays. And then when I ask them to do some handwritten thing in class or even just, read something out loud and stuff, I can see there's this huge discrepancy and it makes it feel like they're not learning what they need to learn because they're using AI. And that is a very much a nightmare and a headache. I think Naveed is right. It can go both ways. I do encourage my students to use Grammarly. Again, I encourage them to use it to write something first and then use Grammarly to check it and then use that as a learning tool for how to improve their grammar. I assign a grammar book in my English classes, but they just never buy it, and I doubt they ever open it. But they will use Grammarly, so it's definitely scary in the way that it's transforming things, and it uses massive amounts of energy, which is another problem. It's this stuff isn't just the energy it takes to compute that much text and that much information is vast. And it isn't just the amount of electricity, but all of the minerals that have to be mined in order to make the components for the computers and everything. It's just a huge concern, I think, that we have to figure out if we're really going to start using this on integrating it in our lives so much. What is the true cost of that? And I don't think that's evident yet. So here's sort of a summary of what we've talked about so far today. Um, AI can be a powerful assistant, but I don't think it can be a replacement for teachers. It can save time for us. It can improve our feedback, and it can enhance student engagement if we use it the right way. And we need to exercise best practices and always review AI generated content, understand the limitations, understand the potential for bias or error, and just be cognizant of that. So I'm going to give you this in the PDF form and the Microsoft Word form so that you can modify it if you want to. But here it is, like automated grading, essay grading and feedback. Here's the prompt. So you can use this prompt and you just say based on the rubric below, and then you can change the rubric to whatever rubric you want. We've got a question that just came up about does it use American or English or British English? And actually, I noticed when we were looking at that quiz we just made that we didn't tell it whether to use American or British English, and it gave uh, a question where there were two correct answers because it was the team are or the team is. In American English, we would think of team as singular. In the British English, they think of it as are. But in the explanation, it actually explained that. Um, so yeah, again, that's prompt engineering. You've got to definitely be very precise about what your prompts are. So here you'll see that the example prompts she gives, and she says, for the multiple choice, create, and then you specify the number of questions, the topic, how many answer choices, how many correct answers, and a short explanation. You could change that if you wanted it to have something like A, B, both A and B, or none of the above. So I will share this with all of you as well. I'm going to stop sharing now. And was it Dr. Abdul? Someone is working on an AI related research topic, and he wanted to. I'm scrolling up in the chat. Yes, it was Dr. Abdul Rashid. He asked if he could make some comments about this. So, Dr. Abdul.
Yes, I am here. Yes.
You had asked if you could say something about a project you are working submitting to HEC.
Yes, means my question is that means I have just submitted a national research project for universities, NRPU, that's called the NRPU project. And I just want to develop means AI tools to improve the students, to help their improve their pronunciation. Actually, in our region, the problem of speaking is very means of the great need. So my focus is to develop the indigenized learning, means personalized learning of the students through the help of AI.
Oh, that sounds like a wonderful project. What is, do you
means
have
means,
a,
means how AI can assist in improving the English proficiency and language learning. Means my stick point is that.
okay. Do you have some ideas about that to share?
Yeah, I have developed, I have submitted, means the project is submitted. I may share in the group as well. That's a long project. Means different instruments I have mentioned. I may share in the group as well. Means just if you later on say something. I was just knowing that as our AI focus is on just writing, developing prompts, but it has just minimize this its use in spoken English as well.
Yeah, that would be great. And I've never attempted to use it for that.
Yeah, means my focus is just to relate the AI to the other skill, means spoken skill of the language as well.
That's great. Yes, I think that would be a wonderful thing to accomplish. So yeah, and then looking at the chat, it seems as if a lot of people here are very interested in the project as well. I certainly am, and
Okay,
we
okay,
would
thank
hope
you.
to see.
Thank you, no problem. We would be later on talking on it. I would be sharing in my in the group as well.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you,
Thank you,
Dr.
thank you very much. Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure. Um, so do we have any other comments or questions? How are we going to give feedback to our colleagues' proposals? Does it need to be as detailed as you just showed us? Are we going to give a grade as well? Please guide. No, I don't think the grades matter. I think just the feedback on how to improve and what's strong in the draft and what needs to improve is what's important. I don't think a grade in this case is important because we're all professionals and um, in the Moodle site, you'll get a grade of, if you submit the proposal, you'll get 50 points and you'll get 25 points for each peer that you review. But Other than that's just going to show that you completed it. It's not an actual evaluation grade based on an evaluation. So I just think that providing constructive feedback by pointing out the strengths and the needs for improvement is um, is going to be helpful. I normally would give like comment on two or three, one or two sentence comments per page, and then a paragraph at the end. Um, so that's how I would normally do it. I feel like giving too much feedback can be uh, overwhelming, and it's better to focus on what the greatest need is, and then uh, focus on that. So that's my strategy for doing it. And but you can all use your own approach, just as long as you feel like you're being helpful to your colleagues by giving them the feedback. Dr. Sadia says most AI apps are being developed that improve pronunciation and speaking skills for non-native speakers. We have the names of them being requested. Um, but apparently there are some IELTS-based apps for speaking and listening. Most of them are paid, according to Dr. Sadia. Okay, that's very interesting. Um, FISA says that you can use Chat GPT. You can record yourself and ask it to give you feedback. That's interesting. Elsa is an example that can give feedback on pronunciation, apparently. Okay. Um, to give feedback to each other on your research proposals, Dr. Shumila is asking whether you can get help from AI in doing it. I think so. I just to remember, just like with your students, giving feedback to your colleagues on this is all about um, being helpful to them. So I would say if you are going to use it, um, have your own in your own mind, a decision about what you think the most greatest areas of concern are, and see if the AI agrees with you. And if you do use it, you could say, "Hey, I ran your proposal through AI. Here's what it said, but here's my opinion." And you can supplement that with your own opinion. Um, I think that, but again, if you just think about the things we talked about today, and let's continue the discussion in the online forum and see how using AI can be helpful without, um, like we said, being inaccurate or biased, and without, and be a way to enhance our own human element in the way that we are evaluating each other's work.
Dr. Avian, I have a question here.
Okay.
Is it necessary to focus on grammar and sentence level concerns in the proposals? Because I did not focus on that while evaluating the proposals.
Not necessarily. If you go back and look at the hierarchy of concerns, I like to focus on whatever has concerns as far to the bottom of the pyramid as possible. And the reason for that is because if you have to, let's say that you feel like there's the greatest area of concern is structure. And improving structure usually means reorganizing things, moving paragraphs around in their sequences, and moving things from one section of a paper to another, and things like that. So if there are structural concerns, a lot of paragraphs are going to have to be rewritten because they're going to have to be made to fit into a different place in the paper once they've been moved. That's why if I was focusing on structure, I would focus on that and not spend too much time on sentence level concerns, just because a lot of the sentences might end up needing to be rewritten. Same with argument. Like if someone really has substantial work to do on improving argument, they're probably going to have to add a lot of new text. They may need to delete superfluous text or text that isn't needed, or they may need to rewrite text to make it more convincing. So there's a lot of sentences are going to be rewritten if major work to the argument is going to be done. So that's why if they really need a lot of work on argument, I might still make some comments on sentence level concerns, but I would focus on the argument because they're going to end up rewriting a lot of those sentences anyways. Now, with that undergraduate paper we saw, I might say, I might ask them to focus mostly on structure or mostly on genre, but I might point out the tons of grammar errors and they really need to work on certain aspects of grammar. But I wouldn't try to point out all those because those would have to be rewritten anyways when the paper was revised. So pointing them out in those specific instances wouldn't necessarily be as helpful. So you just have to figure out on your own what you think you can do to be the most helpful that you can. That's where the human element comes in. Even if you're going to use AI, you decide, hey, I can be the most helpful by pointing this out. So this is what I'm going to focus my feedback on. You can't always give feedback on every single thing that might need feedback. And trying to do so will often distract people from what is more important feedback is, because it's hard to tell what's more important and what's not sometimes. So I
Okay,
just
one thing more.
go
Um,
ahead.
while I was focusing on the hierarchy of concerns, I thought it's more about top to bottom processing. So I thought that the pyramid should be inverted. What do you think? From broader level, we are coming down to the narrow aspects. From purpose and genre, we are coming to the sentence level. So I thought the pyramid structure should be inverted, not as it was presented in the Prezi.
Well, the problem that you encounter with that, in my opinion, would be that certain aspects of a text determine the other ones. So, uh, and it goes back to there's a, a bunch of different disciplines where this particular approach is used, and it's used in engineering, computer programming, architecture, sculpture, drawing, and painting. Um, and that is that you really have to sometimes you have to define parameters for anything else inside those parameters that have meaning, right? You have to have frameworks in place because those frameworks determine what other uh, what other things are going to need to be, or what's going to need to be present or not present, or what those things are going to mean. So um, that's why you look at that. That's the sort of reasoning behind looking at the something like genre and argument as these are the broad parameters, right? Um, if it's a personal essay, we were talking about the student essay, and he used the first person pronouns a lot, and he used sort of colloquial language, and it seemed wrong. But the reason it was wrong was because he was trying to write an academic term paper, a literary analysis. But in personal essays, which is a totally different genre, that's completely appropriate. You wouldn't, but the use of first person pronouns and the use of certain word choice and uh, say colloquial phrases is a sentence level concern. But what's appropriate, what's inappropriate on the sentence level is already going to be defined by which genre you're using. So that's why I say genre is at the sort of bottom of the pyramid. It's not a level of what's more important. It's about what aspects of something are setting parameters for the other elements and how are they creating the expectations for what's appropriate or inappropriate or correct or incorrect. The same thing with argument. Certain types of arguments are going to interpret data differently. There's research that happens in the social sciences that in some of the natural sciences would never be, or methods, let's say, in the social sciences that would never be accepted in the natural sciences, and vice versa. And those are determined by you know the discipline you're in, and that's the tied up in genre and discourse community, and then the methodology section of a research paper is probably the most important aspect of its argument. And that's what's going to determine you know the other things. So if it's about thinking of what um what aspects of the text are going to set parameters, and the other thing is in what way is the feedback actually going to be incorporated in a helpful way. And again, I don't expect everyone to follow my exact approach. I share it with you in case that you find it beneficial to consider it, but you know, by all means, if you have a certain approach that you feel is going to be the most helpful to the person you're giving feedback to, that's the approach you should take, and point out the things that you feel are you need to most point out to help that person improve that piece of writing. That would be my take on it, anyhow. But I know I understand the sequence of teaching things when you're teaching people to speak a foreign language is that you have to start with small pieces. You have to start with vocabulary and grammar before you expect them to speak fluently and give lectures and write essays and things like that. But that's language teaching. Um, Giving feedback on writing to somebody who's already fluent or proficient in the language is a different endeavor, in my opinion. Even though it's closely related, it's still a different endeavor when you're dealing with people who are fluent enough that they can write an essay, but they might need help on different aspects of it. And everybody does, even in their native languages. They can benefit from feedback. But again, you're best equipped to give the type of feedback um, that you feel is going to be the most helpful, and I'm sure it will be very valuable in whichever approach you take. Okay, any other questions, comments, ideas before we conclude?
Thank you so much. I think
Oh,
we don't have much questions today. It was very helpful, especially you have given us some tricks to use AI in giving feedback to the students. I didn't actually use it in the general writings, rather, I used it in research. And my students created questionnaires and we had to correct them again. Anyways, that was quite helpful and we'll keep trying it.
yeah, wonderful. So I'm so glad that you found it helpful. Thanks for your comments and questions as well. And look forward to seeing all of you at the next webinar. And between now and then, you'll be hearing from me in the discussion forums, and I'll be, um, looking at your research proposals and things like that. So have a great evening, everyone. And until next time, goodbye.
Have a good day. Goodbye.